The Secrets of Technology is brought to you by the StarQuest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Technology. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Technology, where we discuss the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Stika. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thanks. And Pat Scott. Hi, Pat.
Hello from Texas.
Hello. So we have a special episode today. They're all special, but just like all my children are all special. But this one is different in that we're, in our second segment, we're going to be having a pre-recorded interview I did with TL Putnam of Verbum, verbum.com, which is the Catholic Bible study software. I think it sells it short because it's so much more than that. And as you may know, we have they're sponsoring the network, giving us a whole bunch of their really awesome packages, their Verbum packages, to give away to patrons. And so TL joined me for a conversation a little bit about Verbum, but also to talk about some of the other things we've been talking about on Secrets of Tech recently, including how does the church use technology today to best evangelize, but also how are we dealing with the tech in the church in 2020, given everything, and even some non-techie aspects of it as well. So it was a really good, wide-ranging discussion. I hope you'll enjoy that. But that'll be coming up later after we talk about our first segment. But even before that, we have a little bit of listener feedback, and I hope you'll both enjoy me in responding to the feedback. This feedback comes from Ted Coville, who sent an email. He said, something happened to me this weekend that I want to share. I know that when we look for items or products online, ads for those products will show up in social media platforms or in web browsers, and I understand that. I've heard people say that ads show up online of things that they've not searched for, but have talked about. I just figured that they had interacted with the ads, but didn't remember doing it. So, my wife's sister recently purchased a car in Georgia, and my wife told her sister that if she could get the same deal for her, she'd buy the car from that salesperson. I've stayed out of this deal and let my wife and her sister do all the negotiations. My wife has gone up to the dealer's webpage and looked at their inventory, but I have not. This weekend, an ad for this dealer showed up in my Facebook feed for this car dealer in Georgia, and we live in Massachusetts. My only thought is that they're tracking IP addresses. If not, it must be the demon in my house that turns the light on after I turn the lights off. No, that's just your smart home. So
yeah, that's about it.
So what do you guys think of this? Is it the IP address, something more, something different?
Well, my question is it the same computer or are there two different computers in the house? Because that could make a difference.
Yep.
If it's the same computer, it's not going to matter that it was her looking it up versus him on his Facebook because it's looking at anything on the computer.
Yeah.
Right.
So that would be my question.
Well, I think the big concern is with a lot of this tracking, and we were just discussing it offline.
Yep.
Is the the complete, or not anonymity, but the complete opacity of this information. We don't know how Facebook is finding these things.
Right.
And there is the joke about, oh yeah, I was just talking about X, Y, and Z, and all of a sudden it shows up.
Right.
And we don't know if there is, voice tracking where it's hearing what we're saying and it's pulling out the relevant information. If it's just, like you said, Pat, they're using the same computer and the cookies are there, even though they're logging out and logging into Facebook off the different accounts. If it's like the IP address, like he thought, where Facebook has keyed in from this IP address, they have searched for. So therefore, anybody who logs into Facebook from this IP address will see this ad.
I think
we don't know.
Yeah, I think in general, people like to go to the simplest explanation. They think, okay, if we talked about this and I see an ad for it, therefore they must have been listening. But the technology is a lot more sophisticated than that. I mean, if they were listening to you, that's illegal, and there are enough people paying attention, enough security researchers that they'd know if they had the ability to and if they were actually listening to us to garner this data. But don't feel too comforted by the fact that they're not actually listening, because what's happening is probably a couple of things. The IP address is one of them, like you mentioned. The fact that you're probably using the same browser. The fact that on Facebook you and your wife may be listed as friends or even married, right? Because you can indicate your relationship. That factors into it. There's all kinds of other data about you that Facebook can gather from outside of Facebook, your browsing history, what you've purchased on Amazon. There's lots of data exchanged between companies that's bought and sold about you. But even things like, I was just saying, one of the examples I always go back to with this has nothing to do with social media, but just how big companies use big data. And the example is Target, the department store. There was a story a few years ago of this dad who got really mad because Target kept sending ads for prenatal vitamins and baby stuff to his teenage daughter, and he got mad. He called up the company. He's like, "Stop, sending this stuff. It's not appropriate." Well, it turns out his daughter was pregnant and hadn't told him, but she didn't. She hadn't been searching for stuff of pregnancy related stuff and she didn't even know it. I think it was actually the scary thing. She didn't even know it yet. It turns out that Target, because they have millions and millions of customers, they have figured out that women who are pregnant, even when they don't know it, tend to buy certain things. Like it has to be a huge data set to come up with this, but it turns out unrelated to pregnancy things. It's kind of crazy.
The stereotypical pickles and ice cream craving, things like that.
Well, it was more like a type of hand lotion or something because your skin was dried out. That was one of the examples I saw.
Yeah, like a particular kind of lotion, and like there was like 3 different products that were related to maybe the way your body was changing, or like I forget how many products and what it was, but when you fall into this demographic and they start sending these coupons and ads. And so the long story short, the point being, the ways that they get the information about what's going on with you and how to target that ad, you have no idea how much data they have about you. Even if you don't actually have a Facebook profile, Facebook knows a lot about you. That's kind of scary too. One thing I want to mention here is kind of like to promote a future episode is Netflix has a new documentary called The Social Dilemma. Which I just watched, and we're going to schedule a special episode of Secrets of Tech where we can talk about that documentary because it is eye-opening. I mean, we've talked about some of this before on Secrets of Tech, but the way they put it together and some of the new information really is concerning and eye-opening, and more people need to hear about this, I think. And so I recommend it, and I would look at look forward to our discussion of it in the near future. But so Ted, I hope that it helps answer some of your questions, and I'm sure it doesn't actually allay any concerns, but that's probably
anything,
why.
It makes it worse, probably.
It probably does. But thanks for listening. All right, so let's move on to something a little less scary. And well, this is probably feeding big data. Now that I think about it, this next topic.
Yeah, this fits in perfectly.
It's perfectly. We're going to be. We had a listener request to talk about health monitoring and activity trackers. So these are both apps and gadgets that help us keep track of our health, our body, our wellness of various kinds. And so we're kind of going to go down some of the different apps and gadgets and things that we're aware of. And I just want to start quickly by mentioning something we just talked about last week, which is, and the one that I own is the Apple Watch. And it helps me not only keep track of steps and standing, which there's lots of question whether that's even an accurate measure of health, but also things like ECG, can do heart monitoring. And the new Apple Watches will do blood oxygen measuring and that sort of thing. So, and the new Fitness Plus service from Apple is going to interact with that to allow you to do a lot of that fitness and activity tracking there too. So the Apple Watch is probably where I would start with from my point of view as a really valuable. But What about you guys? What do you use for gadgets? Let's start with that to activity tracking. Father Cory?
So I'm on the, I've got just bought within about the last month, the Fitbit Versa 2. Of course, just in time for the Fitbit Versa 3 to be announced, but that's all right. That's how it usually works.
Yes.
But and it's, I think there's a distinction that kind of needs to be made between the Apple Watch and the Fitbit.
Right.
The Apple Watch is a smartwatch that has fitness capabilities, very good fitness capabilities. The Fitbit is a fitness watch with smartwatch capabilities.
Right.
And the reason why I make that distinction is Fitbit set out to make good fitness watches that now with the Versa line, and I can't remember what the other line is that does more of the smartwatch type stuff, they've moved into that market. And now that they've been bought out by Google or in the process of being bought out by Google, they're going to be moving probably more to the smartwatch market, basically to become more a direct competitor to Apple Watch eventually. But Apple Watch, obviously, we were going to make a really great smartwatch. And oh, by the way, it's going to have all this incredible fitness stuff, too, in the process.
Right.
But like I said, I'm using the Versa 2, and I really like it because a lot of the things that Apple Watch does. It's got the oxygen sensor. It's got, of course, heart rate. It's got, it's got the ability you can throw music on the watch. Mm-hmm. And then if you've got your earbuds connected to it via Bluetooth, you can actually sit and listen to the music from the watch instead of taking your phone with you. It can be completely hands-free or phone-free when you're out working out or whatever. That's a really nice feature. And then we see the new Fitbits are going to have the EKG capability just like the Apple Watch does. So it's going to be interesting to see as the two watches become much closer.
Is there a reason you went with the Fitbit over other options? What was it about the Fitbit that you liked?
So, well, first of all, I mean, I'd gotten like the first generation Android Wear, which, come on, Google, seriously, you make how many billions of dollars a year? You can't figure out how to make a smartwatch. Anyways,
well, they're going to spend the money and buy one, which apparently,
that's basically what's going to happen with Fitbit. But and then a couple of years ago, our insurance company, of course, part of the perks of the insurance plan, you do your little health quotient thing, got a free Charge 3, which was at the time the most recent Fitbit watch. Well, eventually the display broke, and I think it just some water had gotten in there or something and broke it. So decided to move up to this particular one, stick with Fitbit because I like the fact that Fitbit is more of a health watch with smartwatch, especially the Versa, where it is more with the smartwatch capabilities, where it does have apps that can be loaded on there.
Right.
It does have a lot of really interesting capabilities as far as day-to-day use. There's a version of Flappy Bird for it, things like that.
And you're a runner, right, Father Cory?
I have been, and I need to be again. I haven't recently, but yes,
more than I am.
And that's one of those things we'll talk about when we get into the fitness apps, because that'll be kind of the area I'll cover. Is some of the apps that I have used and seen that are really good for tracking your fitness and tracking miles and distance and all this kind of stuff. And the Fitbit plays really, really well. That's one big thing is Fitbit works with everything fitness, everything food tracking, everything fitness. It just works with it, and they want it that way. They want these companies plugging in with the watch.
Right. Pat, how about you? What do you got?
I started out with the Apple Watch, the very first one, and I've been through 3 iterations now of the Apple Watch. So that's what I'm primarily using. And phone. I've used my phone for some of the fitness stuff too, even though that was even before I had the watch. Mm-hmm. But basically, I use it for heart rate monitoring. The ECG, of course, is on there, and I had done some trials on an app before that watch came out that I was doing on the Apple Watch 3, a cardiogram. And then I use it for sleep tracking, although I'm not super serious about it. I like to just know about how much I sleep and about how restful it is. And at first I used my phone underneath the pillow, charged up and all that. And that worked okay. but the watch works so much better, especially since I can turn it so that there's no display at night.
Mm-hmm.
And so I use it for that. I've used multiple different food tracking, nutrition tracking apps. I've kind of settled on one, but that's not really part of any sensing thing. It's just a matter of key entry.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So yeah, and I'm an Apple Watch user. I have been for many years. I used to have Fitbits so I had Fitbits. I kept losing them.
And going to the hospital with them.
Well, that's what I was going to mention. So for sleeping, like I used to wear the Fitbit overnight for sleep tracking.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped when I ended up in the hospital being put in an MRI machine. What happened was I woke up one morning and half of my face was numb. Like I just was totally numb. And through a comedy of errors that have to do with overcautious, nurse helplines and weekends where the doctor wasn't available, I ended up in the emergency room and with a neurologist wanting to shove me into an MRI to make sure that I wasn't having a stroke. It turns out, long story short, that I slept on my Fitbit. I sleep on my stomach and I slept with my head on my wrist on the Fitbit, pressing on the nerve in my head that caused my face to go numb.
It was a health hazard.
Yes. So I have a blog post on my blog that is very popular. It always gets hits, that like how my Fitbit sent me to the hospital. But
that's funny.
But so from that point on, I no longer wear anything, a watch or anything when I sleep, because I realized that actually could happen again if I did that. So for sleeping, I have it used to be called the Nokia sleep mat. Now it's Withings. It was Withings. Nokia bought them. Nokia sold them, etc. But now it's Withings, Withings, sleep mat, sleep tracking mat, and it slides under the mattress on my side of the bed, so it only covers half the bed. It doesn't cover my wife. It plugs into a USB charger, and it works over Wi-Fi. I think. It's been so long, I don't remember whether I set up on Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. It might be Bluetooth. But in any case, it tracks my sleep data, and it's really good at it. It's really accurate. Yeah. It doesn't detect, when my wife is sitting on the bed during the day, or, when she's sleeping. It only detects my side of the bed. So it's actually been really good and helpful. Now, the question is it helpful? Does it make a difference? What do you guys think about sleep tracking in general? Apart from that, none of us are doctors or medical professionals, but do you find it helpful to see how much you sleep and how restless it is?
Sometimes I find it depressing when I realize how little sleep I actually get, because I'm up goofing around at night. Go visit friends and we stay up till, dark 30, and it's like, oops.
That's true.
I think I have, I'm a light sleeper. I'm one of those that sometimes it's very hard for me to fall asleep. Once I do fall asleep, it's very rare. I don't go into that real deep sleep as often as probably I'm supposed to.
Right.
So it is nice to see that. And if I ever do a sleep study, it'll be nice to have that data that I can show them and say, here's what my Fitbit has been saying about my sleep cycle.
Right.
It does help me to be kind of conscious of, maybe I shouldn't be staying up till midnight watching YouTube or something. Maybe I really do need to go to bed and, try to get a decent night's sleep. Things like that.
Right. Yeah.
With me, it's...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, with me, it's an awareness thing of saying, oh, you mean this week I've had an average of 4 hours. There's a problem. Okay. So I just make sure it's an awareness of trying to say, well, don't watch that extra episode or close out that game a little earlier. Mm-hmm. I don't use it religiously. I just kind of keep an eye on it. And most of the time it's been helpful just as an adjunct, not as a I'm worried about it type thing.
Right.
Yeah. I was just looking at mine, it did track to the 25 minutes. I woke up in the middle of the night last night and lay there in bed not being able to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
That's in
exactly.
there. It is. I think with these things, it's best not to look at them every day and obsess about them. Especially the sleep ones, because then you start stressing about I'm not getting enough sleep, but sort of more in I think something might be wrong. I want to go look and see what happened last night. That might be a better indicator.
Well, and to do it as kind of a week as a glance, like the Fitbit app, you can look at it and will show you, a chart of what you've done, and it rates your sleep. And I don't know quite what algorithm they use to decide whether you get good sleep or excellent sleep,
Right.
but they give you like, 1 to 0 to 100 scale on your sleep. And, so I suppose it's how much time you spend in REM sleep versus deep sleep and how long you slept. And because I've had times where, I get 6 hours of sleep and it gives me an excellent. And I have times where I have 9 hours of sleep and it's like, you had okay, you're good.
Right.
You haven't quite cracked 90%, so.
Yeah.
But it is still good to kind of get that overall scale of how have I been doing.
Okay. Yeah, my apps basically do show a week at a glance or a month at a glance and that type of thing, and give you a percentage, and it gives you a way to correct it if, for instance, there have been times it thought I was asleep and I was watching a movie sitting in the recliner, so it thought I was asleep. So I can go back and adjust asleep? That. No, I'm sure I wasn't, because I remember that movie. So I've liked it as a general overview, not as a I've got a problem type thing.
Yeah. Some of the other things we could, like some more of the health tracking things. If you are diabetic or you need to be checking your blood glucose for whatever reason, there are glucose monitoring apps with Bluetooth devices.
Yes.
Pat, you know something about that, right?
Yeah, I've got one that basically it's an AccuCheck, I think it is. It's an AccuCheck, and when I take my blood sugar, sometimes it does the transfer automatically. Most of the time, I have to nudge it a little bit, and then it sends the data to my phone, and then I can look at those readings and go back and check, and I can enter notes about whether this was pre or post a meal, or whether this was fasting, or whether this was at bedtime, and things like that. And nice. So that's kind of helpful.
Yeah.
I've also got a little blood pressure monitor that is supposed to do a transfer to my phone, and what it mainly does is it will do the recording, and it tells me it's transferred. I never can find it, so I just enter it again. So there's a problem with their app.
Okay.
But it tells me, I transferred it. But yeah, that way I can get a blood pressure and a glucose monitoring, and it's got places in there that I can enter weight. I do not have a Withings scale. But it will let me enter my weight. And so and again, the apps will show you ranges, ups and downs, averages, types of things, and they can be exported.
And yeah, that's the nice thing about it, is you can share this data with your doctor, like at an appointment, or emailed it, or whatever, however they want to get it. Like I have shown my doctor, my phone at appointments, saying, okay, here's what the recordings I've been making over time. And she's appreciated to be able to see that sort of stuff and say, oh, okay, good. That's some interesting information. And I think the benefit of these health tracking devices is to get, because a doctor you would normally before this only be able to see a snapshot of you the one time you're in the office, or get labs done or something.
Well, and it's like, you get the nerves of going to the office. So your heart rate's over 100. Yeah, because I'm very nervous about being here right now.
And I rushed. The traffic was bad.
Yeah.
Everything's go out of whack because you're nervous. But the nice thing is, and I think some of these apps, I've not really looked into it, but I think you can actually do a report that you can then give to your doctor and say, here's what's been going on over the past month. And and there's the aspect too of, I think as Americans in general, we don't really monitor our health as well as we should.
Yes.
We really don't keep track of our weight. We don't keep track of, we'll talk about, food intake, how much are we eating, as I've got a half a bag of Doritos sitting here, stuff like that. We don't monitor our fitness. We don't monitor what is our heart rate, what is our blood pressure, and all this stuff.
Half the battle is noticing these things, and just if I noticed that as soon as I started stepping on the scale every morning, I started losing weight. I mean that caused a small change in my behavior, because I noticed it went up. I bet, and today I'm going to eat a little less because I don't want it to go up again tomorrow. There's that incentive. So I did want to mention the Withings. They have an app, the HealthMate app, that integrates with the Apple Health app on the phone, and presumably, does Android have a health app? Does Google have?
So
something?
there is Google Fit. It's not as developed. Again, this is on Google.
Okay.
Frankly, I think the Withings do match up like with the Fitbit app.
Okay. Yes. Yes, they do.
They can connect.
Yeah, because I've had a Withings scale for a long time, and when I had a Fitbit, it did upload it to the Fitbit app. So I have a Withings scale. I have the Withings Sleep. I also have the Withings thermometer. It's an infrared thermometer, and what's nice is, especially with the scale and the thermometer, is if everybody in your family is sort of spread out a bit in both weight, well, not so much in temperature, because that's everyone's got the same temperature, but weight, it will automatically categorize the weights, like, oh, this is so and so, this is so and so, this is so and so. Although once in a while, especially with the kids, as they go through growth spurts, it's like, who was this one? Like, who's this really? Because so it asks you, and you're like, oh, this is Ben, or this is Sophie, and but with a thermometer, you do the same thing. You can take a temp and you can record it, and that's especially great with kids, because when you have sick kids, one of the things the doctor will ask you is, well, how has their temperature been changing? How have things changed? And if you've been up all night with a kid, you're tired, you got other kids you're taking care of, it can be hard to keep track of things. We used to, try to keep a pad of paper and write things down. But this, with the Withings thermometer, it makes it so much easier. It's non-invasive, so you don't have to have them stick it in their tongue or other places. It's just a swipe across the forehead, and then you just identify which child it is, or which person, adult even, and you're keeping track, and that's what's great about it. So I liked all, and they also make a sphygmomanometer. I love that word. Sphygmomanometer is a great word. A blood pressure cuff. Yeah. They make a blood pressure cuff as well, so that all feeds into the health app. There is an app called Phoebe, which I thought I'd get more use of, but I haven't really. But it's a tracker a symptoms tracker for when you're sick. So if you ever you can add temperature measurements, medications that they've taken. So again, if you have a kid who's sick, you can put the temp in there. You can see when you've given them a dose of Benadryl or whatever, cough syrup or whatever it is you're giving them, or a prescription medicine, and you keep track of the doses. Especially if you have, like I do, multiple children, and sometimes multiple children get sick at once, that sort of thing. So it's called Phoebe, and that's been a helpful app as well. And so what other health, so we'll get into the fitness stuff in a second, but what other health apps Pat, do you think of?
Well, this isn't exactly an app for just me, but I have a COVID tracking app that every day it asks me for symptoms of myself and my family, how many people I've been in contact with, what places I've been, etc. And then once a week, it asks me for more detailed information. And every week, it seems to change a little bit. Like it used to say, when you go out, do you wear a mask? And now it's just like it asks a little bit more questions about, do you always wear a mask, or 100% of the time, and the people you're seeing, do they wear a mask? So it's adjusting to conditions in the country. Okay. And now that's not benefiting me per se, but it is helping to track COVID across the country.
What's that called?
It's called Eureka. That's the app, but I stumbled across it. I don't remember what newsletter that I get a bunch of newsletters, and it was one that was saying that it was from, I think it was Johns Hopkins, or one of those was the ones that was asking for that data. Oh, okay. And so and you don't put in your name, but you do put in your age and your sex, and what else? Is there anything else?
Probably location, or what general area?
It's getting that probably from GPS.
Okay,
off the phone.
You give it location data.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not real private about my location data.
Okay.
And that type of thing. But there's another one that I get a text from one periodically, like once a week. It asks for COVID symptoms, and it asks for things like, how many people do you know that have had COVID recently, or what is your town doing? What are the levels of restrictions of your town or your area? So it's trying to get a general overview of the country and where things are. But I don't see the results. I just see I just do the input.
So apparently it's a research platform in general, and then they have specific studies onto specific things.
Now, I wonder if it plugs into the COVID
the API
tracker stuff that they put in both Android and iOS.
No, because this came out long before the update for iOS that would allow tracking. So it's not a tracker of you specifically. It's more demographical.
They're just asking questions. Yeah.
Right.
And I know we've talked about those before, and so I know there are apps coming out that do support that. That if you catch it, or if someone you've come in contact with catches it, that you can be alerted, or the people you've contacted can be alerted. So that's something to be aware of as well. And they may even update that app eventually for that. Who knows?
It's possible. I know that what I've heard is that app doesn't do it real time, so you don't know, hey, I just passed somebody. It's like, sometime within the last 3 days, you came into contact with somebody with COVID.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk a bit about fitness and diet tracking apps that help with that sort of thing. So what about some physical fitness apps? I mentioned the Fitness Plus in apps and hardware, really. Father Cory, what do you like to use, like when you for tracking your fitness?
So what I use when I go out for my runs, like I said, I need to get back at doing, is it's called Map My Fitness, and actually it's a series of apps, but Map My Fitness is kind of the overarching name of these apps, and it's actually put out by Under Armour. So of course Under Armour clothes and shoes and everything. And it's really good because it's very simple to set up your, what you're going to do. You tell it, hey, I'm going to go for a run. I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm going to go walk. I'm going to go, do lift weights. It's not even just movement based exercises, any kind of exercise that you want to track. You just tell it, you hit the little thing at the top and say, I'm doing this. And then you just start doing it. And it will, like, for example, when I'm running, it will sit there and I'll have my earbuds in listening to a podcast. Like Secrets of Doctor Who or Star Trek or one of those great SQPN podcasts. Got to get the advertising in. Listening to a podcast, and then you have reached half a mile. Your time is, mile split is, where it will tell you what your rate is and all this kind of stuff. It will track, with something like Fitbit, it will track your heart rate as you're doing it. Again, it will track your pace, number of steps, things like that. So it does it all really just automatic. Is once you start the thing, you just take off and go. It'll keep a GPS map if you want. You can put that up there. That's where you see where people will do the different patterns as they're riding their bikes or whatever.
Right.
And I saw someone recently who did like a Duval beer glass as part of his bike ride route. It was great. I mean, it looked almost perfect.
Wow.
That's actually kind of a thing, I guess, in the exercise world, is to try to make images out of their GPS track.
Right.
Kind of a cool idea. But
I gather another popular one like that is called Strava. I've seen that a lot for both running and cycling. It's very popular.
Yep. And of course, Garmin has one. Like if you've got a Garmin tracker, we didn't talk. We talked about Fitbit and Apple Watch, but of course, Garmin, the GPS company, has a really good watch as well. I haven't used Strava. I hadn't even heard of that one. I'll have to check it out.
Oh yeah,
as well.
Yeah.
But I've used Map My Fitness for quite a few years, and the thing I like about it too is you can do, instead of, if you want to share it online, of course you can share it to Facebook and Twitter and everything else, but you can do take a picture while you're out running, and then you can show like your stats of how many miles I went and how long it took me and all this kind of stuff, how many calories I burned sure. And of course that's on average, but that's the one I use primarily when I go out to work out, because it's so easy to keep. Again, you start it up, you put your phone in your pocket, and you go. And I think, I haven't really played with it, but I think like with my Fitbit Versa, I can actually do all that on the watch.
Nice.
Where I don't even have to have the phone with me. Some apps do that better than others.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to mention, if you get a lot of money, you could drop some money on a Peloton bike.
Well, yes and no. So here's the thing with the Peloton app. Yes, I mean, you can get a Peloton bike and treadmill and all these kind of really awesome things for, more money than I'll ever see in my life. I'm just kidding. Not quite that bad, but actually comparative to a good exercise bike, they're really not that much more expensive.
Right.
But the Peloton app itself does not need to use a Peloton equipment. And it's very similar to MapMyFitness, where there's a lot of different exercise. Now, the Peloton ones are more designed for your, treadmills and your bikes and your stair climbers and your ellipticals and things like that, where you're in a gym or you're at a home, you've got one in your basement or something like that. But you can use any equipment. I recommend using a, halfway decent one. I had a really junky Walmart bike that was not even worth, but you can, and they've got different exercises and stretches and warm ups and cool downs and things like that. And again, it's the guidance. You can pay for the guidance within the app,
right?
Where you're doing it with a trainer, a lot of times pre-recorded or live in a studio somewhere. But you've got someone who's kind of guiding with these classes and so on. That's kind of the big thing with Peloton. It's not so much the tracker, it's the
classes
doing the exercises through the streaming.
Okay. So, and then the other part of that, besides the physical fitness apps that help you track and, give you guidance in your fitness, there's also a lot of apps that help you track what you eat and track your food. And again, it's one of those things, if you're paying attention, you're likely to be more thoughtful about what you eat and probably eat less. I've heard doctors say for years, if you just keep a food journal, you'll eat less. That's just because we do a lot of mindless eating in these days. So Pat, you mentioned that you have a particular food tracking app that you prefer. Which one's that?
Well, I started with several others, but I've ended up that I like Lose It probably the best. But some of them will let you do, they have their own database of foods and you can add to it, or you could add, this is my typical breakfast and that type of thing. But Lose It also, of course, has the component of you're entering your weight, and it tracks your weight over time and lets you set a goal. Make some suggestions about, if this is your goal, this is what you need to do. Now, they could do it either calorie wise, or I think I'm not sure on that one recently. I haven't looked, but like if you were doing protein, looking at carbs as opposed to looking at calories. I would suggest that, depending upon which way you're keeping track, you need to make sure which app is tracking which way, and that it's got some flexibility. But the Lose It is the one that I have used most often, that actually seemed to help me better and had a decent food entry system.
Yeah, I've used Lose It myself, and I really like it. One of the things I found that I liked about it was that it had the largest database of foods in it, especially prepared foods. That's always the trick, is like if I bought a box of something or a bag of something at the store, or got something at a restaurant, which doesn't happen as much these days. But Lose It was more likely to have it already in there, because users can also submit their own, things to the database. You can also enter your own recipes. We do a lot of scratch cooking, from scratch cooking here at my house, and it was a real pain to have to enter every little ingredient one at a time every time. So I found that I could just enter all of our most popular recipes that we use and just use that as, this is what we're having for dinner. So that's always been good. So I like Lose It for that. It has a lot of other extra features. It has a community feature where you can talk to people and you get, support like that. And like you mentioned, you can track particular things, water intake, carb intake, that sort of stuff. So there's that. Another one I hear a lot of people talk about is MyFitnessPal. Does a lot of the same things. It does activity tracking, but it also tracks food. I've heard that the food tracking is really good on that.
Yeah, I guess I started out with that one fairly early on, and I just like Lose It better. So it's a personal preference.
Yeah. Father Cory, what do you use?
See, I've used Spark People, which is very similar. Again, it's a very similar concept of you can do your activity tracking there. You can do your and it's not, the focus isn't on fitness. It's just activity tracking, because the focus is more on calories in, calories out. It's that kind of tracking. It's got all the foods. You can go say, well, I went to Cheesecake Factory and ate half a cheesecake. Yeah, how's that going to affect my calories? Oops, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
just a little bit. Stuff like that. So it's got the community aspects. It's got the where you can do have guides. People that help work with you on developing your diet and developing your habits. Of course, they've got things like articles and stuff like that of how to better manage your eating and your menu planning and things like that. And of course, again, all the different foods that you can have and all the different menus and everything. That same kind of thing, though, like if you're doing a lot of cooking at home where it might not have the exact menu or recipe you have, so you do have to enter that in. But, again, that's usually not too big of a deal. It's just, it does kind of get annoying if you keep running into things that you're not always, or, that's not always there, or the recipe is so different enough that it might actually throw it off.
Okay.
But again, you can change that.
Right.
The other one, the big one I use, and I think that definitely needs to be mentioned, is of course Weight Watchers. Weight Watchers is kind of the 800-pound gorilla in the room when it comes to this kind of thing.
That's an ironic analogy.
I'd like to be 150
Yeah, I know,
pounds.
right? I know that's kind of a conscious choice there. And that's not to slam people who use Weight Watchers, because I use it.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I use now. It is the downside with it, of course, is it does require a subscription to Weight Watchers. You do have to join Weight Watchers. Now, you don't have to join and go to the meetings and all that kind of stuff. But in my case, a lot of insurance plans now are starting to add the digital only Weight Watchers subscription as a part of your health insurance.
Ooh.
So in my case, I had previously signed up to Weight Watchers and was paying for it. And then this came in, so then I was able to switch my account over to this free plan, the same exact plan. It's just free through the insurance company. So that really helps a lot for a lot of people. Some benefit, if you've got it, take it. Use that benefit. The app, again, it's very much towards dieting. It's the Weight Watchers program where it's not about calories in, calories out, but it's, are you following this plan? Which, interestingly, generally, as it's been explained to me, is generally a diabetic plan. A plan
Right.
of what diabetics should be following anyways, because it's the most healthy for them. Well, it also happens to be the way to be the most healthy in your life as you're eating, because you're not eating as much half a bag of Doritos in, sitting in your office,
Right.
and stuff like that, like I do. Yeah, I'm not, again, this is another thing I need to be a little more serious about, but it does talk about, monitoring how much water consumption and exercise, activity really helps out, give you more of these points that you can use to other things. There are certain foods that they're free. You can eat, a chicken breast and it counts nothing towards your calories. You could eat, a bowl of broccoli or carrots or other vegetables, and it counts nothing towards your points, things like that. Of course, it's encouraging you towards these healthier foods instead of the, heat and eat pizzas and McDonald's and everything else we eat. But you can still go do that, because if you're good, you've got so many points per week that, okay, well, I've gone the week and I've eat healthy. I've got, 50 points for today. I'm going to go to McDonald's and blow about half of it,
Right.
things like that.
Splurge points. Yeah.
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 Little human psychology there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good about, kind of helping you try. And the thing I like about the Weight Watchers way of doing it is it's still concerned about calorie in, calorie out, but it's not putting it that way. That's one thing I didn't like about Spark People, is you're tracking calories. And it's a lot easier to think, okay, I've got 35 points and here's how I can use this 35 points, versus I've got 2,000 calories in a day plus
Right.
whatever I walk and work out, whatever. How do I make that fit?
Right.
A little more complex. So it simplifies the whole tracking and everything like that.
So that's sort of an overview of the many of the apps and trackers that we use. This is only scratches the surface. There's lots more out there that we just don't have time to cover. There could be a whole podcast series about just health and activity technology. But that's just sort of an overview and hopefully helpful. If you have other questions about the things that we've mentioned, or if you have others that you want to recommend, feel free to let us know. Drop us an email to technology@sqpn.com and let us know, what you think, or if you have suggestions or something that works for you. We'd love to hear about it. So at this time, I do want to turn things over to my interview with TL Putnam from verbum.com, and this great discussion we had. Hope you'll enjoy that. Then we'll be back after that to wrap up the show. Now I'd like to welcome TL Putnam to the Secrets of Technology. Welcome, TL. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners a little bit?
Absolutely, Dom. I'm the product manager for Verbum, which is a Faith Life product. What we do at Verbum is basically, we help the average Catholic. We help all the way up through. I've got bishops who are users of the platform. We help them engage with Scripture through the eyes of the church. Basically, it's a massive cross-referenced library that helps you see not only what does the Scripture say and what do the words mean and what do the original languages mean, but behind that, what have the church fathers said about it? What do the documents of the church say, the doctors and the popes and everything else that's out there, all cross-referenced and hyperlinked so that you can access it really quickly. So that's what I do these days. But before that, I'm a convert to the faith. I came into the church with my wife together in 2011. Before that, I've been in ministry in the Protestant church. And so I've worked at the diocesan level in marriage and family life and in parish levels as director of faith formation and evangelization. And then COVID came and changed the way that the whole world operates.
Yeah.
So now I find myself on the other side, looking for ways to help parishes take care of the work of ministry from a technical aspect.
Excellent. So I do want to mention right now to the listeners that we want to thank Verbum and Faith Life for supporting StarQuest. We have an awesome giveaway that we're doing for our patrons. When we reach 850 active patrons, which we're getting very close to, could happen any day now, we're going to give away not one, but 16 different Verbum packages from the basic level all the way up to this amazing platinum level. It's a multi-$1,000 personal theological library, scriptural library, which Verbum has graciously, very generously given to us to support the ministry that we do. If you are a currently active patron at the time of the drawing, you will be eligible. So everyone, whether you've been a patron for the longest time or you've just become a patron, you'll be eligible. And if you do win, you will select you for one of those packages. Many of the packages, if you happen to be an Eastern Rite or Ordinariate Catholic, Verbum has options for you, that they have variants of the package for you. So be sure to go to their site at verbum.com. We'll have a link in the show notes and check it out. And if you would like to become a patron and become eligible for that and support the work we do, go to sqpn.com/give right away and sign up. So thank you, TL, for your support from Verbum.
My pleasure.
So a frequent topic of Secrets of Technology lately has been how we can continue to practice our faith despite the restrictions that we have on gathering together in person because of COVID and all that stuff. What advice could you give, or insights or ideas can you give for both pastors and parishioners on how to remain engaged in their faith right now?
You know, there's a balance for pastors and for church staff because there's two sides of this coin in terms of engaging the parishioners and the lay faithful. The first side is you want to be active in ministry where the people are. And right now the people are on social media. The people are familiar with Zoom and with all of these other aspects with some other technology companies that have been out for a while, like Formed. And so you want to be where the people are and utilize the tools that the people have. But they're not always the best tools to use. With algorithms constantly changing, social media can filter out what your parishioners would see, and you don't necessarily get the message out as effectively. But a lot of the tools that are made for specifically this work, whether it be your own app, whether it be something like our product, faithlife.com, it takes a little bit more effort to get the people to those places. They work better for the ministry, but they're not necessarily as intuitive. You have to convince the people, hey, download this app, hey, text this number, hey, do whatever. And you're always going to have some attrition there because we are creatures of habit. And so there is this fine line of how do we best engage and in the most effective way, the greatest number of our parishioners so that they feel connected and they feel like they belong, like they're part of this community of faith. And that's a question that lots of people are attempting to answer. We're attempting to answer with our Faith Life platform. But at the same time, when there's a magic bullet, somebody tell me, because we've not found it yet. Right.
Right. I've worked in diocesan ministry with new media I worked with the Archdiocese of Boston about 10 years ago. I was the director of media, and just trying to get parishes to have websites was a job, making sure that they had websites that were useful. But so much has changed so quickly in the past, as we speak now, in the past 6 months. Where do we go from here? Is this a permanent thing? I mean, say we get a vaccine, we get a miracle cure happens by the end of 2020. Do we just go back to the way things were, or do you feel like things have really changed permanently?
So this is, again, a multifaceted answer. One, I think things should change permanently. I think we should take this opportunity of a reset to redo the way that we do ministry, because there are a lot of things that are in our culture that we have conflated with, hey, that's the way we've always done it, that we ought to take a look and say, is this truly the mission of the church? Is this the best way to handle what we've been doing? However, at the same time, there are some things that we need to return to, and hopefully sooner than later. We are an incarnational church. Our sacraments are done in person. There is the sense that as Christ was made flesh and right here in our midst and walked among his disciples and interacted with the world, that we as the church are supposed to do the same thing. There is an enfleshment that the church is of Christ. And so as much as our society says, hey, look, this is great. Look at all this technology we have. Look at how we can meet. You and I are having a conversation separated by miles and miles and miles, but we're doing it instantaneously. And yet, even in this case, something of the incarnation is lost in this relationship. So that I think is what we need to emphasize, even in this time of education and formation. People are spending more time trying to educate themselves and engage in the faith in whatever way we can. I think that's one of the things we need to really hone in on, is that there is something important and, dare I say, sacramental about being face-to-face and about engaging in the faith in a face-to-face way. So I do think, just looking at getting back to the question, looking at history, at the last time that we had a similar pandemic with the Spanish flu, that it really changed the way that society interacted. There was greater distance and social distancing that really went on far longer than was necessary and necessitated by the disease. And I think we're going to see that. I think people are going to be a little bit more reticent to return to large crowds than they were previously. I think this is a great opportunity for us to begin engaging with a small group model within the parish, but still finding a way to return to that face-to-face incarnational kind of ministry, and encouraging people and informing people to get to a place where they're, again, comfortable doing that.
What role do you think technology can play in bringing people together again? So we've seen how technology helps us stay connected when we're apart, but what roles can technology play in helping people come together in those new, say, smaller groups that we're talking about?
So there are a number of things that are potentials, specifically as we look at technology as a tool. It's a communication tool. It's not the silver bullet. It's not the solution. But gosh, isn't the technology that's popped up in the last couple of years, or even the ubiquity in the last 6 months, isn't it amazing? Specifically, if we recognize it not as our salvation, but as, hey, here is a way that I can connect with you better than I was able to connect with you before, and stay more engaged. So social media does a great job, were it not for the algorithms, to connect us as people are part of Facebook groups. But as those groups begin to multiply, so too, it's a product. They're trying to sell you things. So too do the advertisements and the distractions and the algorithms, which are made to keep you there longer by feeding you things that they think will either make you very happy or make you very angry, but certainly not that will make you think.
Right.
So one of the things we're doing at Faith Life is creating a platform of social media that is distraction free, a place where for the parish side of it, the parish can come in and they can do a lot of their administration of their the member management of the website, of live streaming for those places that need to do it in a way that is less complicated than some other solutions. Do their online giving, but also have a place of connection and meeting where you can put your announcements and your bulletins and your prayer requests, which you wouldn't do on social media because it's not private. Right. So here's this internal network where you can get together as a community and share prayer requests, and then break into smaller groups and have reading plans through a book or through a book of scripture, and interact with that as a small group. Maybe it's the kind of thing where you have, as we're trying to get back into this face-to-face, where you have this group where you can discuss things throughout the week about this curriculum or this, what you do a reading plan of the catechism if you wanted to. And then you meet together once every other week to be together and to be face-to-face, but to still have that connection and interaction with the specific people that you are part of a parish community with. Without the distractions of the advertisements, without the distractions of the algorithms and all of the other division and polarization that we see coming through social media.
It's one of the things I always said to parishes is, yeah, you can use social media. You can have a Facebook page. In fact, you should have a Facebook page, but that shouldn't be your only place on the internet, because that's not yours. You're borrowing space from somebody, and they can do whatever they want with it, including taking you off. That you should have a place of your own that you pay for, that you maintain, just like you have your own building that you have mass in. And so I agree with that. There have been a lot of different people, companies around trying to offer bits and pieces of this, but it's nice that I'm seeing this more and more, that we're bringing it all together, because most parishes don't have one dedicated tech savvy person on staff to manage a bunch of different things. So it would be nice to have it all in one package.
Yeah. And, there's a couple of things with having it in one package. One, when I was in the parish, there were just so many logins to remember and so many processes, and you're trying to find the most cost-effective means of live streaming, and you can do that, but then you have all of these extra settings and hacks that you have to go through to get to that. I love that Faith Life is putting together not so much a product, but an ecosystem of products.
Right.
We're gonna work with whatever management system you have for your parishioners, or whatever email system you have for your parishioners. But if you want to make it really easy, you can do all the emailing and all of the website and all of the everything else through Faith Life. Now, one of the things, as you were talking about having multiple places on the internet, is we have to have a little bit of a sense of teleology about this. What is the end? What is the purpose of a thing? And a lot of people say, well, hey, I'm supposed to have a website. Now I'm on the web. Well, but what's the purpose of that website?
Right.
Who is spending time in marketing and designing and in theology all kind of together? My question is, who is the primary audience of this thing? So my immediate parishioners should not be the main client of my externally facing website, right? The website is the place where someone is going to go if they're brand new in town, or if they're curious and have questions, and they want to know a little bit more about this specific parish, or maybe they want to know a little bit about Catholicism writ large, and they're not comfortable coming in and having a conversation or coming and visiting a service. They want to know who you are first. And so how are we putting out that message through our website? What language are we using? How easy is it to navigate, not just for our people, like up at the top where it says sacraments. And we just happen to know that under sacraments is where you're going to find, oh, I want to get married. And my grandma told me I had to get married in the church. One of the best websites that I have seen in this regard, and I have copied it in a couple of parishes that I've been at, is from a parish down in Grapevine, Texas, St. Francis of Assisi. And right up at the top, it's like, I want to, ...
Exactly.
And you click on I want to, and it says, I want to get married. I want to get prepared for the sacraments. I want to, or rather, I want to get prepared for baptism. I want to get prepared for First Communion. I want to join a small group. I want to ask some questions. And it's all right there that, yeah, my members who are active at the parish, they're going to be able to understand it as well. But the whole purpose of that is then evangelistic. And then we have another place somewhere completely separate that's internally facing. How do I interact with our own members and answer their questions and provide spiritual care for them without having these competing messages all in one location?
It's interesting because, again, I mentioned when I worked for the Archdiocese 10 years ago, the Archdiocese of Boston, we worked with Our Sunday Visitor at that time, developing a template for our parishes to use to build websites. And that was among the things that we tried to put into those templates was those sorts of questions. When someone we did a big survey. When someone comes to a website, what are they looking for? What is the first thing? The one thing most people want is Mass times. Most people come to a website looking for Mass times, whether they're new, whether they're, I don't know, maybe they haven't been to Mass in a long time, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so Mass times on the front page, and you think that makes sense. You imagine how often it takes forever to find out what time is Mass.
Well, not only what time is Mass, so it ought to be where you don't have to scroll. It ought to be in the footer of every single page. It ought to be where it's really easy to find. But not only that, you've got people who are not familiar with the way that Catholics do it, and they're coming in with their kids, and they're coming back because of their kids. We need to let them know if there's a Mass that has a nursery, and maybe your parish doesn't. Most of the people don't use the nursery, but an external person, that's one of the first things they're going to look for. Is that available? Because I need to understand it without getting distracted by my kids, and I certainly don't want you to see me getting mad at my kids, and I don't want you turning around and glaring at me because of my kids.
Right.
So, finding out what the questions are, finding out what the objections are, and removing them before they become a thing.
Right. Yeah, that was a big thing. Is always think in terms of the questions of people are going to ask. What, someone comes and says, I want to get married at your church. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what they're looking for, not some obscure, 7 layers down through submenus about marriage click here for marriage coordinator. That's not that's not the best thing to do. Several years ago, about, I guess 7 years ago now, my wife and I were with our kids. We have 5 kids. We were looking for a new parish in our area. We weren't moving, but we had some changes in our parish, like Mass changes that we wanted to find a different Mass. And we decided, you know what, this is a great opportunity. Let's try a bunch of parishes. We live in the Boston area. Within 5 miles, there are 20 churches. So we said, let's try a bunch of church parishes over a period of time and see what we encounter. And the first step was always, let's go to the website, see what time Mass is. And I ran into websites that said, Mass is now temporarily being held in the Richardson Hall. I have no idea when that notice went up, when temporary ends. I had no idea what the Richardson Hall was, and then another website, I was greeted with a long notice from the pastor about the appropriate dress at Mass, which I'm all for appropriate dress at Mass. I don't get me wrong, but is that the first thing we want to present someone with when they might be interested in checking out Mass?
Let's take that and then go to the question of marriage, because this is a pet peeve of mine, Dom. Uh-huh. You click on it, and the first thing that you see are the requirements.
Yes.
You've got to, and these I was a marriage and family life director for a diocese. These requirements are important, but shouldn't the first thing be, we're so excited that you're getting married, and we're glad that you want us to be a part of that story. Come and have a conversation with us, and let us be a part of that journey. Right?
Right. If you're trying to sell a car, if you're a car auto dealer, you don't list the requirements for qualifying for a loan, because that's nobody's going to come in for that. You get people to come in. Once they're there with you, then you can. And we're not selling cars, but even a car salesman knows how to do this. Then when they're in, then you can present the less exciting bits of it. But yeah, you want people to be excited about this big step they're taking in life, or excited about bringing their child for a sacrament of baptism or confirmation or first communion. We want people to be excited about something that they may be trepidatious about. I haven't been to church since I made my first communion. What's it going to be like? We don't want them to feel afraid to
Right.
go.
And yes, there is something to be said for, if anyone would be my disciple, let them take up their cross and follow me. But the people that he was addressing that to had some familiarity with what it meant to be a disciple. They were on the edges and they had been watching him for a while. And so too, we need to be approachable enough that then when the time comes for a difficult call to holiness, that person's ready to accept it.
Right. Well, we would think about it. When Jesus dined with tax collectors and prostitutes, he probably didn't require them to change into different clothes, to make a profession of faith. He was dining with them precisely so that he could get to that point later. But first, he wanted to break bread with them. And
that's right.
And that's the key here, I think, when we kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, the importance of breaking bread in person, both literally in the Eucharist, but also in a figurative sense. You were saying we need to be physically present with one another in prayer groups and Bible study groups and youth groups, and we aren't at this time. So I think we have to put extra effort into these ways that we want to connect with people when we can't do it in the most important incarnational physical way.
Well, I would say there's also this tendency, birds of a feather flock together, right? We have this tendency to engage in the life of our parish in such a way that we might not know anyone who's not Catholic, other outside of passing them on the street or engaging with them in our workplace. But in terms of the friendships that we have in many cases lost the ability to even know where to begin with evangelization. Mm-hmm. And Evangelii Nuntiandi says that evangelization is the church's deepest identity, right? It's what makes us who we are. And so I think that this is an opportunity for us, as we are socially distanced, to recognize our street and our neighborhood as an important center for social interaction. Right. To be able to sit on the front porch and wave at people as they go by, to engage the checkout person at the grocery store in conversation. If you're like me, you see the same clerk over the years multiple times. If we begin to recognize the dignity of that person and engage that dignity as a person and not just, they're a fixture in the store, then I think we begin to answer that question of, is the church fundamentally changed by this pandemic? And I think that's the way we change it in the positive way, is that we recognize our own place as laity, baptized and anointed as priest, prophet, and king by virtue of our baptism, engaging in the ministry of the church, not in a way that somehow mimics and makes us little priests, but because we get up and we are a lector or we're an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion, but because we're out doing that thing which is right and proper and the most deep identity of the church, we are being the incarnation and the tangible presence of Christ to the world.
One of the things I thought a lot about a few years ago is the importance of how we've become so, in relation to our parishes, at least in this area, the parish is the center of our faith life, but it's almost all of our faith life for many people. And right. We engage with people on Sunday or when we're at church. Let's just put it that way, when we're at church. And there's that importance of engaging with even our fellow parishioners outside of church. And one of the things I was thinking about for some time was this idea of maybe we should be gathering in our neighborhoods. Maybe we should find what parishioners live near us and start connecting with them if we haven't already. I live in a big development. I don't know which people in this area around me, and I've lived here for a dozen years. I know my immediate neighbors, but in the big development, how many of them are fellow parishioners of my
Mhm.
parish? That's an important question, and maybe this opportunity is to kind of grow smaller, like you mentioned.
Yeah. What would happen if you found a couple of parishioners that lived in your neighborhood and you gathered together at your house and you had a barbecue in the front yard instead of the back,
Right.
right? Where you became approachable and people could overhear your conversation and they could see your joy and your laughter and the fact that you genuinely enjoy being around one another. Would that maybe get one or two people to say, I wonder if I'm bold enough to go over and just say hi, and maybe I'll get invited to have a brat too.
Right. That's not so many brats around here, but I make them just for that. We're more of Italian sausages in the Boston area, but I get the point. No, but the bigger point is right. If we start to gather and we start to show the joy of the Christian life in community, that is attractive. And people are so isolated today that they're going to look for ways to find that connection again.
Well, and that's one of the things that I love about StarQuest is that you come to the podcast network, it's Catholic, and you're like, all right, we're gonna get some Catholicism, and it's a Doctor Who. We're going to get some Catholicism around Doctor Who. That was my introduction to StarQuest. Was one of the follow-ups to an episode. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna listen to that, and engaging. If I'm interested in that, then my neighbor who also watches the show and loves the show but isn't Catholic might be interested in that, and is going to hear something of our faith tied in and hooked to something that they already love, and that's evangelization.
Exactly. That's at the heart of our podcast network, is that we explore the intersection of faith and pop culture, but it's because it's a sort of a threshold for deeper conversations. And so some of our podcasts are like, we have Pray Station Portable, which is a prayer Liturgy of the Hours podcast. I mean, that's as Catholic as you get.
Right.
And then we have in Catholics of Oz, which is another Australian Catholic podcast. And then, like you said, Star Trek, Doctor Who, and of course, one of our most popular right now is Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, where we explore UFOs and ghost stories and all kinds of crazy stuff, but always from a faith and reason perspective. And I think that is something we can take out again into the world around us. And so when you're at work or you're at a barbecue or you're meeting people and you're talking about things that they like sports, TV, movies, but you're doing it from your Catholic perspective. It doesn't have to be bang someone over the head with, have you prayed the rosary today? I mean, that's great. That comes at a point, but that's not the first thing we lead with. And so, yeah.
Well, and even have you prayed the rosary today? It's maybe this is my Protestant background coming out a little bit, but someone's going through a really difficult time. Well, let me pray with you.
Exactly.
Let's pray a rosary together. Let me, as John the evangelist said, let me bear your burden. Right. Let me carry that with you. And so as a person who does product management, let me bring that back in and say, hey, this is one of the ways that technology can help, specifically as we're socially distanced, but even as we come back together for those main things that we have in our faith and Mass and the adoration liturgy of the hours. Hey, I'm going to hop on faithlife.com to my parish's social media, to my small group, and I can bear my burdens, and I can feel comfortable sharing things in that group, knowing that it's not going out to the wider social media world.
Right.
This is a way that technology can assist in that return to whatever normal is on the other side of this.
As I look at the way things are today, as we're talking, it amazes me that if this pandemic had happened 5 or 10 years ago, I mean, we had a lot of these technologies, but they were much harder to use. They were much less prevalent. Getting a live stream of a Mass going 10 years ago was a major investment.
Oh yeah,
cameras and switchers and all kinds of stuff. Now, if you have a smartphone, you can do it. I mean, that's at the most basic, and so I kind of feel like we are blessed I mean, nobody wants to call a pandemic a blessing, but we are blessed that the pandemic happened at a time when we could continue to connect and live in community through these technologies.
So you brought up a pet peeve of mine, and I want to address it with these people who are listening. If you are at a parish who is using a smartphone for your live stream,
Yes.
please, for all that is right and holy, don't use the main speakers.
Right.
Put a little monitor speaker 2 feet from that iPhone, and you'll kill the echo and you'll be able to hear.
Right.
But so many parishes are like, oh, we got microphones and we got the speakers, and it just sounds like you're in a tin can and having mass. And there is a solution, and it's cheap.
Yes.
Just put that has nothing to do with our conversation, Dom, that you just brought up. I'm triggered. You triggered me.
Well, if all you've got is a smartphone, God bless you. That's the beginning. But there are inexpensive steps up from that. We've talked about it on Secrets of Tech, and we'll continue to talk about it. But in fact, we recently talked about in this new era, there's a new liturgical ministry, the liturgical cameraman.
Right, that's right.
And it's kind of interesting to note, but it's one of those things that's changed.
Well, and there is this sense of that cameraman, specifically if you are in a place that has switchers, you are determining the attention of the whole parish, where you choose to focus. At the elevation, where you choose to focus at the reading of the gospel, whether it's wide or close or whatever else, that actually makes a difference in the experience of the Mass.
Right. As I said, my pet peeve is in my parish, during the prayers of the offertory, when the cameraman switches to the pianist in playing. No, these things are important too. Show Father doing the prayers.
Right.
Little pet peeves. We're all learning this, and so that's it. We'll get better at it. We'll all get better at it. So, TL, this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate you joining me. I really appreciate Verbum's support for StarQuest, and we'd love to have you back sometime to continue this conversation, especially as things continue to change.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I hope you enjoyed that interview with TL. And so we're back with Pat and Father Cory. And I want to cover a couple of headlines before we go to our picks of the week. Their first one is that this story that Microsoft is releasing a deepfake detection tool ahead of the election. Now, deepfake is this term that's come to apply to any type of usually video that and sometimes photos that's been manipulated to make it appear that someone is saying or doing something that they didn't. So, for example, manipulating a video to make it appear like a certain politician or candidate said something outrageous or offensive or something like that, which could affect an election. And so Microsoft has released this tool only to media and political organizations that looks at very detailed information, stuff that's not detectable to the human eye, but which are indicators that something has been done to this. So what do you guys think of this story?
I think it's something that's important because, I know we've talked about deepfake on Secrets of Tech before. The ones nowadays, they're not like the little blurry photo, pixelated photo, someone who might sort of maybe look like Joe Biden or Donald Trump saying or doing something.
Right.
They look as real as if the person themselves did it.
And sound is real too. Yeah.
And sound is real. Look and sound is real. And the technology of your basic desktop computer has gotten to the point that this can be done at home with the right tools. Any one of us could do this. And so it's a real concern that these things exist, because we want to believe the photographic data that's on the internet is real. We want to believe that the videos that we find on the internet, someone posts a video of a riot, we want to believe that that actually was at that riot and that actually did happen.
We do believe what we see. Yeah.
Yeah. And the fact is we're in a time right now when any trust in any record is suspect.
You can't just believe anything just because you see it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've actually had several Facebook family members or friends of friends type thing posting things that had been determined to be a deep fake. And when I showed them the article of this is what the original was versus what you just saw, some of them believe it and some of them still believe the fake.
Yep, right.
And what I would love to see is a way that you could say, here's a video, copy the link and submit it to a website to say, has this been faked?
Right.
That's what I would like to see.
Right.
More than just the Facebook and Instagram and those types of things employ that in what they're monitoring.
Right.
It would be nice to be able to say, hey, what about this one?
Give us all access to a tool to do this. Yeah. Yeah. Without having to wait for them to do it.
And not have to have it on your computer, but just to have it as a submission of yes or no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I do think there's kind of a concern, though, because, some of these fact checker sites haven't been showing themselves to be factual in their fact checking. So there is some concern with that. But again, this is more an issue of who's doing it than the tools that are available for them to do it.
Yeah, some of the problems have been, it matters. It's a question of interpretation of what does it mean by factual or not? Yeah, which is. So you have to be able to rely on your fact checkers, and that's a whole nother problem. Another headline I want to look at is this story that was in the Boston Globe, as my local paper, talking about a problem a lot of families are encountering right now, and frankly anybody who needs to buy technology, is if you are in the market for an inexpensive Windows, Mac, laptop, or Chromebook, or a printer, an inkjet printer, you're finding trouble, or even like a desk. That's another thing that people have a hard time finding. You're having trouble getting a hold of any of that. And so this story by this column by Hiawatha Bray in the Globe talks about some tips for how to get around this problem. So I just wanted to mention some of them, and maybe if we have any others. But he says, be prepared to pay more. You might have to buy a the more expensive ones, the Windows laptops and Mac, MacBooks. They're in stock, but it's just the low ones that aren't. Don't just go to Best Buy, Walmart, and Staples. Look at other, maybe your smaller computer retailers that you might be around. If you're in a hurry, you might be able to find something online, but you're going to pay more. Consider buying something used or refurbished. We often talk about the Apple Refurb store. If you're looking for a Mac, or fix up the computer you already own, upgrade it, add more memory, a new hard drive, that sort of thing. I had one that I'd suggest is, if you're really in dire straits, consider an iPad or even a desktop computer. Like the article focused on laptops, but I know a desktop computer can't be moved around, it takes up more space, but if you're in need, the desktop computer be cheaper, and they're more available. What do you guys think? Suggestions?
And probably last longer too.
Probably than a laptop. Yeah.
I think it was interesting, being prepared to pay more. When I built this computer system, of course, it didn't come with a webcam, unlike most laptops do, because it is a desktop computer that I built from scratch. And I built it kind of in the middle of everybody trying to figure out work from home, school from home. So finding a good webcam was a little more difficult, and ended up, I bought, a Logitech C920C, which is the last generation of their top of the line home webcams. There's the 930C or 930E that you can't get,
right?
Or at least you couldn't get at that time. You just, because they were sold out. Everybody was buying them. They're
starting to come back, but
they're starting to come back.
Yeah.
And so I probably paid a little more for this webcam than I would have maybe now.
Right.
But it was a new in stock. I mean, it was a new in box. It was still a brand new webcam. It was just an older model. And that's something to look at too, is maybe some of the older models are available. Again, you talk about refurbish on Apple, where you can get some pretty good deals on, a year or two old model that's been refurbished or was just a, buy and return type of thing, where nothing really was never really used. And you can save a bunch of money on a really good computer that lasts you quite a few years.
That's right. How about you, Pat? What do you think is?
Yeah, I've been seeing this a lot with my clients because a lot of them have desktops and all of a sudden they're thrown into the world of Zoom and stuff and say, well, they can't see me or hear me. Yeah, because you got a desktop.
Right.
And so in the very beginning of pandemic, I tried ordering several and they took 3 months to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
And then about 3 months into it, then it started being, okay, it was a month to get them. And then now it's like, I can sometimes find one in stock around town. Most of the time it's like, well, it's almost never in stock. It's mostly we can deliver it to you, have it at the store tomorrow type thing. Because I've been helping people find these a lot.
Yeah.
And I always suggest a Logitech or a Microsoft. Some of the other brands I just can't speak for, and quite frankly, you don't have as compatibility with drivers, that type of thing.
Yep.
You do have to be careful, even online buying, because I bought from what I thought was a reputable company. I got the box. It was dented inside a nicely pristine Amazon bag, but it was dented, and it really wasn't a camera. It was a speaker.
Oh.
A little portable speaker. So, of course, Amazon made it good, but, it's like there's a lot of people out there that are taking advantage of this rush to buy.
Yes. Be careful of who you buy from and what you get. Make sure you're getting someone reputable. Careful about buying off of eBay. The usual precautions there. Careful if you buy something from Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Always open the package. Make sure it starts up. The whole 9 yards. Be careful. Better to buy, if you can at all, better to buy from someone someone who's in a storefront that you can go back to, that sort of thing.
Talking about storefronts, there's a lot of bigger cities, and I mean bigger as in, even 10,000 people or more. We're not talking like mega cities, that they will buy in bulk old business machines and refurbish them.
Yeah.
And they're desktops, sometimes laptops, and they're great computers for this kind of thing. You don't need a lot of processing power to do Zoom or Skype.
Right.
It really doesn't take that much.
So
that's a good option there too.
And I wanted to follow up on your comment, Dom, about an iPad. I have a lot of clients that were thrown into this boat of all of a sudden I've got to talk to my doctor and he only wants online. And so they were desperate for webcams. And I said, do you have an iPhone or do you have an iPad? You can do Zoom, DoxyMe, Skype, all of the Google Meet. You can do all of those on those devices. And they're kind of shocked because they hadn't really thought about that as being a possible tool. Right. And it's not the best tool because it doesn't give you a huge screen, but if it's a one-on-one, it's really no worse.
That's right.
You know.
All right. So I think that's some good tips there. So some in our headlines. So that's good. Let's move on to our picks of the week. Pat, why don't you go ahead and start with your pick of the week?
Okay. A lot of my clients are buying laptops or even all-in-ones, like the iMacs or a Dell all-in-one, etc. And then they start to go pull in a DVD that they want to transfer pictures off of and say, where's my DVD? Because the companies aren't building them in. Now, your traditional desktops like Dell will still have a DVD CD reader, but anything that's thin won't. So I've been recommending getting just an inexpensive external drive that's a DVD one. And the several that I have actually personally bought were Asus and LG and an HP and a Dell. Basically, they're good DVD players. Some of them are Blu-ray, but you don't really need Blu-ray if you're just talking about data or CDs or music, whatever. And they're usually between $49 and $79 for a decent one. And you just plug it into a USB port and they work real well. Now for a Mac, a lot of those standard ones work on a Mac as far as reading data. Now you used to be able to boot off of a CD DVD on some Mac systems, but that's pretty much obsolete anymore. You're getting it off the internet recovery. So I used to buy super drives just for that reason, and now I'm just saying, well, gosh, as long as it's Mac compatible, it doesn't have to be a Mac device.
Right.
So.
Right. Yeah, I have a one of those portable Blu-ray things, and I only ever use it when we pick up an old audiobook. We have to rip the discs to put them on, because you can pick those up at yard sales and stuff like that. Again, when we used to do those things, you can pick those up pretty cheap. The Blu-ray, or I'm sorry, the CDs, and so I would rip them and put them in the audiobook player. But I only use it once in a while. But it's nice to have. It's a nice to have. That's good.
It's nice to have one in a family so you can borrow one if you need it.
Right. How about you?
Well, that's where I've got an LG one portable DVD player here too, recorder. It's actually the DVD recorders, and you can get some that are, or most of them now are the burners. Basically, it's funny when burners used to be like a luxury. Now they're all the burners.
Right.
And every once in a while, I run into something where I was like, oh, I actually have to find my blank CDs or blank DVDs. Where are those at again?
So, Father Cory, what's your pick this week?
So with this new house comes all kinds of new gadgets. And when it's got a detached two-car garage that originally had garage door openers, but one of them had been pulled out whenever, don't know when, and the other one broke like right as we bought the house. So we needed new garage door openers. And the person, the gentleman who has been helping put this house together is like, no, we're going to get the good stuff. So I now have 2 LiftMaster Wi-Fi enabled garage door openers, which means using their app, what's called MyQ, my letter Q, I can remotely open and close the garage door. Nice. I don't have to have the button. I don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. I don't have to go into the garage. I can, as I'm walking out of the house, I can hit the button and it'll start opening the door. So by the time I get there, I just walk in through the garage door instead of through the side door. It's fun, but it's also got a lot of practical. Of the other night, I realized I forgot to shut the garage door. I was in the garage doing something and forgot to shut the garage door. So I was able to just quick grab my phone, hit the button. They do have connections to different things like Google Assistants, Amazon Alexa, stuff like that. But there are limitations due to security. And I think this is something that's happened recently that I hope they'll be able to fix some point soon, where you tell it to close the garage door. I can say, Google, tell MyQ to close the garage door. It closes the garage door. You tell it to open it. I'm sorry, I can't do that due to security reasons.
Right. They don't want people to be able to yell in through an open window and open your doors.
Exactly. So that's a minor limitation. I think, again, that's something they're hopefully going to fix, but it's still really nice to be able to look at my garage door, because we've all done that. We've all done that.
Yeah.
You're getting ready to go on a trip. You get the car loaded up. You pull it out of the garage. You drive off. And did we shut the door?
Right. Yes. Well, at least this way, like, that's the other nice thing is with a lot of these things, you can do it remotely from far away.
Yeah.
Like
because I can.
Yeah.
I can do that where I could be sitting. I did that the other day. I looked and I did one of those. Did I shut the door? Oh yeah, it's closed. It's been closed for 2 hours. How long I've been gone? So
right. Or
we're good.
Your brother shows up and wants to put something in the garage. Like he's supposed to. You just open it up for him and let him throw the thing in and close it behind him. Yeah.
And that's actually an interesting thing now too. Is Amazon is starting to offer what they call Amazon Key.
Yes.
Where in certain places where they've got Amazon delivery, you can give Amazon permission, if you trust Amazon well enough, that your delivery guy can hit a button on his app, however he tracks where he's at, and it will pop the garage door open. He can throw the box in there and hit the button and it shuts the door.
Nice. Yeah. That's
better than the front door.
Yeah.
Because they had that for a while too, where you could, let them come in the front door. And I'm thinking, maybe a garage door would be safer.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you've got like a detached garage like I do, where at worst is going to happen, they're going to steal some of your tools or something. Hopefully.
I had that happen once where it's not Amazon Key, but I had an Amazon delivery driver open my front door and toss the package in and close it while we're sitting there. And like, that was weird.
Oh dear.
It was a little disconcerting.
They're in a hurry, don't you know?
I have a parcel delivery box outside. Put it in that. But that's a whole nother rant. Thanks. That's a good one, Father Cory. If I had a garage, I'd think about that. That would be good.
Garages are nice to have too.
Oh, I wish I had a garage. So my pick is an article that was shared to us by a listener, James, who sent this in, and it's an interesting article. It's from Mashable, and it says the headline is "How to Blur Your House on Google Street View and Why You Should or Might Want to." I don't know if should is for everyone, but there are people who will want perhaps to have their house blurred. Now, as you may know, you probably know, Google Street View shows for many streets in America and around the world. They send these cars around and they take pictures as they drive down the street, so you can see what a building looks like when you're looking it up on the Google Maps. Now, some people may want to have their home obscured. For example, if you are someone who's got like a stalker, or people in your life who are in trouble, you may not want to have your house recognizable from the street. There are other reasons, and the article goes into them. But some locations have a law against it, for instance. So Google does allow you to ask to have your home blurred on Google Maps and Google Street View, and the article lists the steps you need to take. It's just a few steps to put in the request to have it blurred, and then they'll take care of that for you, hopefully fairly quickly. So that's my pick, is this article. It's a very useful information.
So everybody in Germany has read that article then?
Why? Why do you say that?
Because your daughter had looked for Street View on Google, and she was going around a lot of places looking, and she found it in Germany. You could almost go nowhere.
Oh, right. Well, actually, that's actually the thing in German law, is makes it very. In fact, I think that you have to give permission for Google to show it. That's actually the interesting thing. Yeah,
that was a funny story, though.
Yeah, there was a suburb of Minnesota where it told Google, no, we don't want any Street View of our entire town. So so the entire town is off of Street View. So it's interesting. Different points of view.
I could see for even like businesses or nonprofit organizations, let's say like a women's shelter or something like that,
exactly.
where there's real concern that I know people who they've got privacy issues and privacy concerns, and believe me, I agree with them. But I could see where having that privacy, not having it on Google Street View, is something that could be a life or death situation.
Right.
There is concerns for privacy for that, and not just the government or somebody who's worried that Big Brother is watching them type of thing.
Right. I'm glad this tool is there for those who want it and need it. That's for sure. All right, I think that should do it. Those are some good picks. Well, let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Technology, including David M., Brian S., Russell Y., Timothy D., and John K. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Technology and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. What did you think of any of our discussion today? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/technology, or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to technology@sqpn.com. You can find links from our discussion and picks of the week on our show notes at sqpn.com. Remember to, this is funny given what we talked about earlier, but remember to like every episode of Secrets of Tech on Facebook and retweet our shows on Twitter at SQPN. Feed the algorithm. It is your friend, apparently. And make sure to leave us comments. Until next time, Pat Scott, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Technology.
Thank you for having me.
Father Cory Stika, thank you as well.
Thank you, Tom.
And I'd also like to thank TL Putnam for joining me earlier for that interview. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Technology on StarQuest.